Greg is here.
Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's event with 192 Books. I am Evan, I'm the manager here at 192 Books, and we are thrilled to have a celebration of the release of Pietro Cicognani's new book, Architecture and Design. This is a really incredible book featuring over 20 of his designs and houses. Just flipping through kind of feels like you're taking an intimate guided tour of each of these incredible designs. There's floor plans and detailed notes on every page. So this is a wonderful book. And tonight we have a wonderful opportunity to talk to Pietro and his dear friend, Isabella Rossellini. Isabella is a renowned actress, filmmaker, writer, philanthropist, and model. And she's a dear friend to us here at 192 Books. And she's a dear friend of Pietro, and they work together on Isabella's Barn, which we're going to hear about tonight. So first, I'm going to let Isabella introduce Pietro, and then we're going to see some images from the book while that happens, and then there'll be a discussion about this book and their collaboration and their friendship. And after that, they'll be taking questions from the audience. So if you have questions tonight, you can send it to me, Evan at 192books.com, email it, and I will pass it over to them to be answered later tonight. If you have a question now, you can send it. The quicker you send it in, the better chance you'll hear it tonight. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Isabella, and you're going to see these images from the book. And I hope you all have a lovely night.
Yes, Evan. I think that book and the images will talk about Pietro's talent. Pietro is a dear friend, very dear. We'll talk at least even 2-3 times a day. I took a few notes about his biography. He was born in Rome in 1985. He founded Cicognani Calla, his architectural firm, with his friend at school, Anna Calla, who unfortunately passed away in 2009. They both graduated with master's degrees at Columbia University. The first job that Pietro took was with Romaldo Giurgula, and it was in Australia. He followed the work of the parliament in Canberra. And his first work that he did as an architect himself, it was the house that he built for the Rolling Stone founder, Jan, and his wife, Jane Wenner. And then he worked with many people, from Catherine Rayner, Billy Joel, Uma Thurman, Sean Connery, myself. His project ranged in many cities, of course, New York City, where he lives, New York State, upstate New York, Long Island, East Hampton, Tel Aviv, Rome, Monterey, and Mexico. I would like to read what Pietro wrote in the book. Having been raised in a humanistic culture and society, Rome, I've come to realize that in the end, the needs and aspiration of the humanistic individual is what matters. Proportions, the relationship to the site and the surrounding environment, natural light, views, material, and the way they are all put together is what matters. Now, Pietro did, in the 35 years that he has his firm, he worked in 120 projects, and he selected 18 for his book, Pietro Cicognani, Architecture and Design. So I have my first question, Pietro, how did it feel to look back at all your work in the occasion of making your book? How did you feel proud of yourself?
I felt old. No, of course I felt proud, and I was surprised I had forgotten some of them because they were quite a while ago. This is like a retrospective in a way, how well they held up through time because of detailing, quality of detailing, and I think certain quality of spaces and relationship to the site, how well they held up. And I was surprised. And also some of them, how daring we were when we were younger.
But you said to me, and I agreed with you, because we talk all the time, Pietro and I, we were talking about, yes, being very daring when we were young, both dreaming to be artists. I'm a filmmaker and an actress. It's a different discipline than architecture, but Pietro and I spend a lot of time going to exhibits or going to museums, seeing films together. And we commented that, yes, when we were young, we were very experimental in dreaming. But as we get older, that comes back, isn't it? Do you feel that your work as you were young and now that you're old becomes more daring? It is for me. Is it for you?
Yes, I agree. There was some kind of a middle period where we settle into some kind of mode. But I think lately it has come back, some of the verb of trying to the boundaries and see where it brings you and put together things that are unexpected, that kind of vitality that was there before. It's funny. Maybe COVID helped, maybe because of being so sedentary, the mind starts to work better.
In fact, during COVID, you created an incredible guinea hen coop that looked very artistic. And when I was asking you about the young you and the old you being more daring, it came to mind your egg chapel, the chapel that you built. Was one of your first work that looked like an egg. I mean, first of all, I have chickens, so, but the egg is the beginning of everything, isn't it? So to have thought of a chapel as an egg, I think is extraordinary.
Actually, that's funny because it's actually the photo is in the book. This was maybe 25, 30 years ago. There was the occasion to do a private chapel. And I thought, how intimate is an egg? So we basically build an egg with stucco lustro, with shiny walls, and put in a floor and a ceiling that were suspended without touching the walls. And all the lighting was coming from above and from below. And you felt totally suspended in animation with a cross, and that's it. So that was a very, very spiritual experience inside the egg. And then finally, during COVID, got to work on a guinea hen house and really push the boundary there as well. And it's funny, eggs again, because they produce wonderful eggs.
We will go over back to that. I remember talking to you because I have chickens, and this is something that it touched me because you built something that was through your fantasy, but you did call me and you say, what would your guinea hen like? And I said, well, they have paws, they have and they like to perch. So you have to create places where they can sit and put their, because if they just see on the floor, they wouldn't be uncomfortable having, like we hold our feet. And I was very touched by the fact that you thought of this detail, and it might be an inspiration to you to think of this detail and working around what's needed.
I always ask my clients what they like better, and this is part of that research, and they were very good clients.
Very good client. But no, this is I will read you a quote from an article that came out on you in Forbes magazine. I don't have a stylistic formula. We pay attention to what the client wants while we try to be ourselves. First of all, there is two comments. We always talk about we. You have wonderful collaborators, and I would like to ask you about how you work with them. But also, I'm an actress, and in my art discipline, I think that what I have to do is to be completely available to the director. I don't come in saying, I'm going to play the role this way. I'm just totally available to try to take a trip in his mind and or obey, but first of all, you can obey, but you have to understand, otherwise you're just obedient and it'll come across as just obedient. It may not be what he wants. And I also would like a comment that you comment on this tension that in architecture there is, that it is an art, but you also have to work for a client, and it's also not a piece of art that you attach to a wall. You have to live in it. It's a living space. Can you elaborate?
Yes, well, there's certainly a big element of psychology. And sometimes I feel there's an element of therapy, that you go from one client to another. It's like the therapist goes from one client to another, and you listen really carefully to what they need. It's very important to listen to what they need, because in the end, we are in a service profession, which an actor, I don't know if that's considered a service profession, but we are.
Do you find it a limit, or you find it that it is an inspiration?
I find it an inspiration, because without boundaries, I find it much harder to work. I think when you have precise boundaries or certain boundaries, and certainly an understanding with the client of some commonality, then those boundaries are very helpful, because it makes you really focus on how to solve a problem
within boundaries.
within those boundaries. And I find that very healthy, and you get the best results actually when you have the client with the good boundaries.
Do you, is there a difference? You've worked with a lot of private homes, but you also worked creating art galleries, restaurants. You did the Heinz Architectural Center in Pittsburgh. Is there a difference? I mean, all these places that are more public, do they have a committee that decides, the museum decides,
Yes.
or you have to look at the collection and say, how do you display the collection?
That particular job was in Pittsburgh, was a competition that we won, and we had to deal with the whole the museum director, which was Richard Armstrong at the time, and the whole board. And I love dealing with boards. I love to explain, to seduce a board, and it's what's nice is that in the end, a lot of people get to see what you do. And instead, when we do homes, you know, we hope that people give big parties and big cocktail parties, that a lot of people see what we do, but some people don't want to give parties. And then you just, it remains more, you know, only for a few people.
Yeah, it's the same thing that painter says often. They paint, but then if the painting has been bought and goes into a house, that painting is not seen. So there is a pleasure to work in public places because of that, because you talk and you refer to a bigger audience.
Yeah, it's different, but there's a certain satisfaction. But then also when you work with a private person, it's great to see that you made happy the person that hired you, and you made a wonderful library, or you know, a wonderful home, or a wonderful art studio where they can produce art in it, and that's very satisfying as well. The intimacy of that relationship.
But for sure, I think I tell you often I send you an email saying I'm coming home, and every time I come, I think how lucky I am to live in the place that you've created for me. This barn that we oh, here it is. You know, I don't know if you can see some of it. I can see the big ceiling, and I'm sitting here in a corner with my. So I have to say that sometimes I make choices that are very eccentric, and Pietro is always the first friend that says, "Oh, it's a good idea, Isabella." Most of the time people think, oh my God, Isabella's starting to give sign of senility, she's going gaga. But you always have great confidence and encourage me. And so one of the things that I've done is to create a lot of spaces. We're working right now in a new project in a bed and breakfast at my farm. But meanwhile, there is this farm with this barn where I am now. But I want to tell a story about when I bought this piece of land, and there were these dilapidated barns, and the ground was very abandoned, and yet there was something very poetic. And when I bought it, people just didn't understand it. It was in the hand of a developer that was going to subdivide the land. It is about 4 acres, and was going to build 2 homes or 3 homes. And they couldn't understand why I wanted to keep this old. And you came and immediately saw it. And also I wanted a pool house because I have a bad back and I had to exercise, and I wanted an indoor pool. And you walked around in this dilapidated garden and you said, here is the place. And I just said, well, Pietro, how do you know it's here? I mean, it's a bush. What do you know? And I understood that you can see differently than me. You have a kind of a 3 dimension in your brain, even as you walk into a space, into a landscape. Did you notice that you have a brain different than ours?
Well, in your case, you already had an old structure that was dilapidated, and then you had a second little structure there. So I immediately felt that the 2 structures don't communicate with each other very well, that we needed a third. It wasn't to make you spend more money and for me to make more money. It wasn't that the reason at all. It was because I thought with 3, you create the sense of the village. And it's a triangle. So originally you lived in the big place. Your children lived in the small house, and you all ate there. The kitchen was there. And then the third place was the swimming and the sauna. So I thought that this dialogue between 3 was much more interesting than the dialogue between 2 pieces. And then I thought that it was very much you to change building to go eat, or to change building to go swim. It seemed like the right thing to do for you, for the type of energy that you have.
Yeah. And also it looks very much a friend of mine, because then I had a landscaper come and help me, and he came in, and Lars Krantz is Swedish, and he said, and the barns are red barn, we painted them red, like, but they were red already, so we painted them red anyway. And he came and he said, but you created a piazza like in Italy, and you create, but the barn looks Swedish, and I am half Swedish. My mom was Ingrid Bergman. I'm half Italian. So Roberto Rossellini is my dad, a filmmaker, and then my mom is an actress. So you see, it goes on. See, this, what Pietro thought, when I loved so much, is all this wood. And the first architect I've met wasn't Pietro. He said, well, how do you, are going to insulate it from inside, and the wall are going to be white, and where do you want your master bedroom? And I just thought, wow, he is so far from, I love all this wood. And when Pietro came, look, there are holes in the wood because the barn has been used, and there is this history of other people that lived there before me. And Pietro immediately understood, and the first thing they did that was so brilliant was to create a shell that to insulate the barn, to create a shell, because it was easier to paint the outside. Well, you explain it, Pietro, so that all this
so
is safe.
In order to maintain what you're saying, the charm and the character, the exterior siding, which was also the interior siding, remained just the interior siding. And we created a sandwich of insulation and new boards on the outside, because that was easy to paint red. So that way, we remain true to the tradition of Swedish barns that are painted on the outside and then natural wood inside, but nobody knows that there's that thickness of insulation. And in fact, it's very well insulated, your barn, and it looks now old on the outside and on the inside.
But can you go back to the image of the bathroom? Because I also want to explain the originality of Pietro thinking. In the bathroom, so Pietro didn't feel that tile would work with all this wood. And the bathroom is just, here it is, keep this image. And below, I just have the kitchen, right? And so one day, the sink overflow, and there was water going down in the kitchen, landing on my sandwich. I said, this doesn't work. So I called Pietro. I said, Pietro, the plank of wood are, you know, because they're old, there's some separation and some gap. And if I am taking a bath and there's splashes, it goes right into the kitchen. How do we do it? Pietro, look at the floor. Pietro, explain what you did that was so brilliant.
So there are two things that are fun. One, the floor, you use the copper siding like you do on a roof of an old building, the copper for the roof, and we put it on the floor, and then we put the welding line so that Isabella doesn't slip. But it's become like leather. It's beautiful as leather, but it's a very unusual way to treat a bathroom floor. And then the fun thing about it is, because we were on a kind of a budget, we didn't want the plumbing to go everywhere. We did a central column with all the plumbing, and all the bathroom fixtures radiate from the center of the bathroom. So what you see there is the bidet, the WC, the sink, and the tub, all radiating out of the central column, which is kind of unusual for a bathroom, you must admit. Usually you have the thing around the room, so that you have to basically pirouette your way between fixtures, bathroom fixtures.
I've been living here for 20 years, and I love my bathroom. Another thing that you thought it was brilliant was that I had children, and my barn had loft space that because you know, they would put the straw and the hay. And with Pietro, we said, you know, I said, Pietro, you know, I have children. If they climb up on the loft, they would fall and they would die. What do we do? We'd have to protect them, but we didn't want to put a railing because it wasn't really a railing. So Pietro called the big apple circus and got the acrobat net, you know, the flying acrobats. I don't know, there may not be a photo of it in the book, but it was such a brilliant solution. Oh, here it is. Look, the acrobat's nets.
So instead of the railing, we found in Georgia a place that made custom-made nets for circuses. So we gave the dimension between the beams and the post instead of a railing. So they built these nets that you see in this image, not just the horizontal one, but the vertical one that fits right within the beams and the post. And then the children cannot fall down. And if you look up, the black netting with the wood, you don't even see it. So you don't even have a railing, but the children are completely safe.
I lived here for 20 years. Nobody fell, nobody broke, nobody broke their neck. But my children now are in their 30s, and I still have all the children from the village coming and asking if they can come to it's a myth in the village. Everybody wants to come to the acrobat net.
But also, I thought it was very role reversal. It was nice to have children above you, 2-story above you, looking down at the parents while the parents are having a cocktail, and you have the children that throw you stuff from above. I thought that was a nice thing to achieve.
They certainly love that, yeah. I would like to talk also about your collaboration with this is the fantastic swimming pool that you created. This is the new building, and this is the place where Pietro said, this is the site for the swimming pool. And he presented me with 3 different drawings, and we selected together the drawing, and he created a swimming pool that it is. How did you make the wall? Everybody asks me, what about this wall that looked like cement?
It's called parging. The technical word is parging, which is basically cement on lath, on plywood. And unlike your main barn, I felt that this space has to be completely different. It has to do with sport, with hygiene, cleanliness, and ease of operation. So I thought a monochromatic light gray thing would be much more appropriate as a surprise from the red barn when you enter. And so the slab is poured concrete. The unusual thing, it's a square pool, which is unusual, but you wanted a jet and swim against the jet. So that was possible to do with a square pool because you don't have to do laps. And then I thought, why not rotate the square to 45 degrees so you get more flow area around the pool? But if you think of the geometry, you get these triangles that you can really use as a result of.
You can see I use many corners to exercise and do music, yoga. Yes, there is great space, and sometimes I even have dinners there. It's really an amazing space.
And then when a pool is square, it looks also less like a swimming pool. It looks more like a fountain almost, or reflecting pool, which is more appropriate for your use.
And the lighting is amazing. In fact, whenever I'm being photographed, sometimes still as a model, I have to do a portrait because I'm promoting a film. They always say, well, we come to your house, do you have a place? I say, yes, the swimming pool, because the background is fantastic and there is this absolute incredible lighting. Because I think in this house, you could really orient, while the other 2 structures existed, although you opened a lot of windows and cupola, this one you could really find the orientation that you wanted, and the light is extraordinary. And
then we added the greenhouse attached to it in the back, so the energy of the pool continues into the greenhouse, where you also have dinners.
Well, sometimes I have dinners, and now I've been using it as a hatchery or for my lamb. So, but it's really wonderful to swim and have all the faces of the animal looking at me in the winter.
It all goes back. It all goes back to chickens. You see.
Somehow it all goes back to chickens. Pietro, I would like to talk about Rome, where we both of us grew up, but we are not. We're not. I don't feel totally Italian because my mom was Swedish, your mother was Russian, and we studied and worked in many countries. We lived in New York for many years. I speak several languages, so I don't feel totally Roman. And yet, when I go to Rome, there is something that moves me profoundly. And you said that Rome influenced your sense of proportions, your sense of. Can you explain to me what Rome means to you as an architect?
It's proportion, of course. You're born there or you're raised there, and it's innate. You don't even realize that as a child that you see churches, but then I think it remains in you, the sense of proportions, and then later you analyze it later in life. But I think when you're young, it's just innate. And then I think this kind of fatalism, historical fatalism of seeing one era after the other in Rome, the layering is so evident, and the fact that then you survive it all, especially thinking of us now. One era was Rome had many plagues, and then you see the result, and then it flourishes, another era flourishes after, and then another culture flourishes after. And then I studied quite deeply the Etruscan culture and civilization, and that was totally taken over by the Romans. And then when you see the Baroque church next to the ruin, when you born in that environment, then you understand later that you want to play with juxtaposition of things like we do when we work together. And then maybe juxtaposition that are not explainable right away, but then if you think more carefully, maybe they do make sense to juxtapose something with something else in an unusual way. And then the pleasure now of having almost finished my apartment in Rome, the pleasure of just working with the artisans down the street, and the mosaicist is doing now a big job for East Hampton, and the lamp and lampshade guy, they're all on the street, they're still in the street, and you can, and I had like a waste paper basket, they were custom made, the lamps were custom made, the upholsterer down the street, the restaurant is down the street, it just, this kind of COVID experience in Rome was really an experience of getting to know your artisans. And
also sometimes take trips with some of your clients and you bring them to Italy, to the Carrara marble quarry, or
absolutely. One of our dearest clients came. We went all the way up the mountain in Carrara in the quarries with the trucks, and we went to a little restaurant and we all ate the lard that they all eat because it takes very little room and it gives you a lot of energy. So the lard is part of the experience of choosing a slab of marble. And
I remember I was in the theater and playing, doing a play about an Italian guide and talking about the David of Michelangelo that was made with the Carrara marble. The quarries are still open. And I remember you came from Italy after a trip, and you brought to me and all the other actors just little pieces of the Carrara marble. And it was such a thoughtful present and so magical. This, this fragment of this incredible white marble that sparkles a little bit. It wasn't any shape. It was just what you found in the road, I think, what you found as a debris. But it was magical. And this is a lot of the things that Pietro and I do, send bones, stones, feathers. We see things that inspire us or moves us. And for me too, I see, and that's why I didn't want to modify my barn. I find that poetic, the layering of time, the footprint of other people that lived before me, and then I come for a period of time, whatever I'm given, and I adapt this barn to what I need, by decorating it with all my crazy animals, because I like animals. But I love, it gives me this sense of fatalism that you were talking about, a sense of that, there is an American sentence that is, how do you make a difference? And I always think that I know what it means and I admire it. But I know that when you're an Italian, you also feel very little, because this enormous culture that is around you, an enormous civilization, you feel very little, and you can change maybe, but very little. But also it gives us an enormous sense of humor, and you and I laugh a lot, and Italians laugh a lot. And I think it's partly come from, we can't do anything. We're here just for a little time, so let's have fun.
Yeah, but then we're both here, because here we feel a little bit bigger. So we both run away.
Yes, we certainly, we work, there is much more work in America. And there is from my experience, I don't think I could have had the career that I've had if I wasn't in America. Would it be, do you think this? Because
probably,
I
agree with you.
For you, is this the same?
Yes, I would say so. I would say so. But you don't have the elbow room or the freedom of expression that clients can give you here. To do a garden or villa now in Italy from zero, it's almost unthinkable. And here you can do it.
Yes, you can do it financially, or you can do it also because in Italy everything has been built, but it's also a mental state.
It's also a mental state. Yes. I think it's a cultural attitude also that you can't compete with all of this stuff that is already there. And here we compete with each other all the time and on all levels.
Yes. Yes. No,
there's something healthy about that.
No, I agree with you. Now, I wanted to ask you about, because you're a specialist of autistic thing, not autistic, autist, I mean audio, like
acoustics.
Acoustic, I'm sorry, I read it wrong,
Yes.
of acoustic. Is this because you always said to me that when you started a project and they give you, build this, the first thing you do is that you have to go see the site, and it's the site and the nature and the spaces that is the first input that you have to create a house. Is also the sound part of it?
I think sound has become as important as the beauty of a room or the material that you use in a room. I think is as much a luxury, silence, for us today. And in many projects, we hire an acoustician, a very good one, to tell us what to do exactly with this wall or with this floor, not to hear anything, not to hear plumbing. One client told me, if I hear anything from the floor below, I'm going to kill you. So there I made sure that we packed that floor really well. But apart from that, if you really think about it, when we live in a society that is so full of distractions and noise, it's wonderful to arrive to a place where that is silent. And we often ask the builder to wrap every pipe with insulation, every single pipe, which is not usually done. And we find that contributes to the quality of your household.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I can't stand noises or hearing my neighbors. That bothers me.
Well, your neighbors are sheep right now and woodpeckers, so that you don't mind.
No, and then I have all these sheep that always go blah, blah. And then I have a woodpecker. But I tell you, Pietro, because I asked Pietro before we started the show, that because my barn, you created the new wood, you created, so to preserve the inside of the barn, the old wood, you went outside and we insulated by rebuilding a shell, basically.
Yeah.
This is new wood, and generally that new wood is treated. So I would imagine there wouldn't be too many bugs in that new wood. So that woodpecker is not looking for bugs, he's drumming. He's drumming because he cannot sing like a canary. And he's drumming to seduce the female still now in the beginning of the fall. I mean, amazing, isn't it?
Well, if you want, we'll send you the acoustic consultant to look at the issue.
Yes. Probably come and shoot the bird. No, I'll keep him pecking on my. Pietro and I, first of all, Pietro, I wanted also to talk about your two apartments, the one in Rome and the one in New York, because the one in New York, where generally there is molding, where the wall meets the ceiling, generally people ask for mold, but you've used that and you put a collection of sneakers that you have. Can you talk about your fixation on sneakers?
Yes, in that small apartment, I felt like I should turn things upside down and to feel comfortable. So all the books I hid in walk-in closets, all the clothes, all the wine, and I felt more liberated to live in a freer environment without seeing all that. And then I felt I have this huge sneaker collection that I started 20 years ago, and some of them are probably quite valuable. So I built a custom. I studied very carefully the right angle, the right lighting, the angle so that the shoes wouldn't fall off, and then all around the room, I built this red lacquer and metal and mirror shelving for my sneaker collection, and it's really, as you say, quite stunning because and unexpected.
It's very elegant. So at the beginning, you don't realize they're sneakers, and then you look up and say, "Oh, sneakers." And
when I brought my friend Massimo Ferragamo to see it, he couldn't believe it. He said in any of their store they would never do something this intricate and complex and good looking.
Absolutely, they should do that. Ferragamo, I mean, Ferragamo's shoes, they should do that, of course.
But this play of mirror and lighting made the shoe became, you saw it, in reflection up, reflection down, and I think he was a little overwhelmed.
And
That's in New York.
And you know, you are in a medieval.
In Rome, you have to be more respectful. So in Rome, I decided in this medieval part of Rome, between Piazza Navona and the river, instead to deal with 1950s, 40s and 50s. I had quite a bit of art from that period, Italian art. So I just bought at auction quite a bit of furniture and furnishings of that era. So in this medieval part, you go up and you open the door and you find yourself in this incredible world of balla, of futurism and the Pisis and Sironi and like a pure 1950 environment. And I felt that was liberating in that situation, just like the sneaker was liberating in the New York situation. And I love the juxtaposition of having two places that are so different from each other in two towns that are so different from each other. And I find that polarity quite interesting, and maybe bipolarity quite interesting.
The polarity, your poles that you have. And you are painting your walls in Rome. You sent me some photo because you have the Balla screens that you bought at your auction.
Yes.
And that inspired an incredible painting on the wall, and also a new artisan. I mean, or it's not, because I asked who's the painter that can paint that way. But it's
she's a wonderful painter from Rome, and in 3 weeks she did these walls with geometric shapes. It feels so calm when you enter, and he's using Roman colors like gray, light grays and ochres and slight yellows in a combination. It is very dreamy environment, and it's almost finished. And it's a middle between balla and art. There's an art component and there's a Roman color component, as if art was born in Rome, and he would have done a wall like that.
And Pietro, now we're working on a new project. It is not, hasn't made it on the book because we just got the permit 2 days ago. And that is a bed and breakfast at my farm. And this is when I bought 30 acres in the town where I live, Bellport. It was, the land was, in the official paper, it was called wasteland. And I bought it. I said, I'm going to make a farm. This is where my friend said, Isabella went gaga. I brought Pietro in this, really, it was not a beautiful wood. It was not a beautiful, nothing. It was just like that. And I said, I'm going to make a farm. I do this, I do that. And Pietro said, this is fantastic. Immediately, he was the first supporter and the first person who said, you're not crazy. He understood that I like to create things and have big project. And Pietro often is part of this big project, whether it's my barn here or my daughter's house in Brooklyn that she recently sold, or now the bed and breakfast at the farm. For example, at the farm, we're still working. We found a basement. There was probably a house that collapsed, and we found a basement, and we left it. It has been 4 years that Pietro and I call it the catacombs. And we are thinking and thinking and thinking. And I know that one day we'll come up with a solution and it will be great. But next to the 30 acres farm, a little cottage came available that I bought. And I thought it would work for the farm, to support the farm financially, to create a bed and breakfast. But I really were more interested in the breakfast part because we have a lot of chefs come to our farms, because we have a lot of wonderful produce. And instead of demolishing the house, Pietro, you decided to keep the little cottage and create an enormous disproportionate kitchen, and that completely reflects the need of this farm, that are quite original.
Yeah, this little house looks like a Hopper painting right now in the middle of nowhere. And because of your program with the farm of wanting to do theater pieces, maybe weddings, maybe cultural events, I thought how great to have a disproportionately big kitchen with a little hopper house. And then you had a little garage. So I said, let's bridge from the garage all the way to the house and create this plywood kitchen, all in plywood, finished in plywood. So it looks like you're in a big boat. And I think that's the right thing to do. So that will be the heart of the house. The house will become an accessory to the kitchen, and the kitchen will be the soul of the place that the farm will gravitate from.
And I love that you, once again, that you work with what you had. What you had was the beginning, maybe is what you said at the beginning, that it actually helps you if you have some sort of corral, then you can become more creative than just say, well, do what you want. I totally understand that. Because there was a little house, we do need a big kitchen, we want to eat, we are convivial, we are Italian. How do we solve that in architecture? And you completely translate it. And
yeah. I think it's a new life, that house again, just like your farm where you live now. It's going to see a big new life, a cultural life, because you're going to feed a lot of cultural events.
I can't wait to be ready. I'm delighted that we're going to be busy in all winter. So I'll see a lot of you, because you'll have to come to the site with your collaborators. Can you talk a little bit about your collaborators?
Yes, we
quite often.
Wonderful. We're in Midtown, in the middle of the skyscrapers, but the feeling here is very much like an artist studio. We have a duplex. We have enough room to be socially distant, so it's very easy to work. And after all the remote work, it's a pleasure really to be back here with all the collaborators, my partners, and really it's more fruitful in a creative field like ours to be able to communicate with each other. So in this little kind of atelier in Midtown, we feel very creative and protected, and we missed each other for the 4.5 months that we didn't see each other. It was obviously we managed to work, but it's great to be back here.
Because there's a creative energy in the together that, yes, it's hard to.
Yes, which is hard with the Zoom meetings to replicate that part. It's great for decisions, but not for the creativity part of.
Pietro, should we take some of the questions from the people that followed the discussion? Evans is sending me, Elena asked, would love to ask Pietro, let me see, chat. Elena asked, would love to ask Pietro what is his dream structure to design might be. Who, what lives in it? What is it for? Where is it?
Oh my God, so specific.
So the question is, who is it for? Who lives in it? What is the house for, and where?
A convent for defrocked monks. No. No. And defrocked nuns. No. Let me think. An artist commune, maybe. A place where, yes, a big building that is an artist commune. Something like that. I don't know, maybe in Scandinavia. Something like that, where creative people can share a building.
Pietro, now that you've mentioned Scandinavia, because there is a lot of eccentricity and creativity and humor in your work, but there is also a rigor and a kind of matter-of-factness that is very important to me, because being Swedish, at the end of the day, I'm a minimalist, I'm clean, I'm organized. You said that Sweden had a very big influence. Did you work there?
Yeah, I worked there for a while after with Romaldo Giurgola, which was my mentor at Columbia. I worked there for a while, and I fell in love with the landscape and with that certain rigor. And I feel that one can learn a lot from it. But I also feel that the spurts of creativity that you have in Italy, once you have the rigor, it's easier to break the rules. You have to have rules to break them, and that taught me that rigor. I wouldn't want to live there all the time, but it was a compliment to the Italian side, to just like you have in a way. And I still use it. We're very rigorous in the work we do, but then we love to break through and find something eccentric out of that rigor.
How do you also make sure that personality of the owner comes through and is not overwhelmed by your own strong personality?
Well, the type of clients we have, they make sure that their personality comes through. So it's the other way around. You have to be able to give what you want to give, but you have to always make sure that the personality of your client is present and comes through. I'm a great believer in that. So there's no danger of overwhelming the client.
Overwhelming them.
No danger.
And Angela wants to know, how did we meet each other? So I don't remember the day I met you, Pietro, because it was part of all the kind of European hanging out in New York. I think Beatrice von Rezzori might have had something to do with it. She's the one that said to me, you should talk to Pietro, as I was in despair because I bought this big barn. Right. And the architect said, we are going to, we have to insulate it. So we're going to build walls. And I bought it because of the wood inside, and he was going to ruin it. And then he said, but there is a hole, and whether you have the master bedroom. I thought, oh my God, I don't want any of what he's talking about. Where do I go? Who's going to help me? The roof was coming down. I had to have help. And Beatrice said, talk to Pietro.
I think that's correct. I think she takes the credit, even today, for us having met each other. So
she takes the credit, saying that you and I were going to get married. She always said, well, when I talked to her, she said, "Oh, you're going to get married." And in my, Pietro, I have the honor to write the preface of Pietro's book.
Wait, don't say everything, because they're not going to buy the book. They have to have some secrets to buy the book.
Something dirty. That might make them sell the book more. So my preface starts by saying, with an Italian word a little vulgar, non abbiamo mai scopato, meaning we never went to bed together. We are just friends, but everybody thinks we are a couple or a former couple that is so intimate with each other. And Pietro, but we're just friends. And Pietro, at the end of the book, in his acknowledgement, thanks a lot of his collaborator. And to me, you say never. So we've met, and who knows where it's going.
Things should change. We'll bring the acoustician involved for sure.
Yes, well, we have to. Tita asks, what are some structures and designers that have been most influential to you?
Well, my mentor, Mr. Giurgola, was a disciple of Louis Kahn and had worked in Kahn's office in Philadelphia. So even though the book, it may not be coming through from the book that clearly, I'm fascinated from all of Louis Kahn's work, which is incredible. And then the fascination for quite a few years, the Japanese architects as a whole are wonderful, and they have that sense of rigor we were just talking about, because their culture is so rigorous, and I find that quite interesting. But I think Louis Kahn understood Rome very, very well, and he said that architecture is really most interesting when it's on the drawing board and when it's a ruin. And all the stages in between are not as important. So that's a great phrase that I always remember when I think of Rome and when I think of Louis Kahn. And in a sense, it helps us survive and live that fact, that idea.
Did you meet him? Did you meet Kahn?
No, he was there. He died a long time ago.
Oh, so you never met him.
Penn Station. Nobody knew who he was. He died on Penn Station, like that. But in the 70s, I think he died. So I did not meet. But a lot of the lessons that came through Mr. Giurgola to me, in terms of he did a lot of clay models in plasticine with the landscape and the buildings. And we used to do a long time ago a lot of models in plasticine. To study the landscape. You're
still doing some models. You do when I come to your office. There's still some three-dimensional models.
We believe very much in old-fashioned way of building models, not virtual models, but cardboard models or balsa models. We're here actually surrounded by them, and the physicality is wonderful. And also, when you cut a board of cardboard, you're bored. So when you're bored, you think deeper sometimes about what you're doing, and maybe sometimes it's harder to be bored when you're stimulated with a video screen all the time. But I don't know, when I find there's a certain role in boredom that it's useful in creative
When I was in Paris before the COVID in March, I went to visit Renzo Piano's office in Paris, and he had a little, little shop with all the woods, and he does all wood model, including the landscape, which I thought it was,
he's a great believer in the object and studying it and
studying it, and you can imagine yourself in it. I mean, me as a person, that is hard sometimes to read, but it is in 2D. When I have these models, I can really have a better sense. Ali asked, do you ever look at interior architectures as framing a shot in a cinematic way? And what has Isabella taught you in this regard?
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, you do have vistas. You pay a lot of attention to vistas.
To what you see through a window, what you see through another window, when you go through a door, what you're going to see. Yes, I don't know if that's cinematic or not, but that's very important. That's very important. And actually, Jorn Utzon, who was the architect of an opera house in Australia, was an incredible architect. He taught me that when I was very young, about the importance of placing a window and put the window here or here or here or here, and what you're going to see exactly from here. And so that is very important. And when we still follow that.
Well, I think it is a kind of a framing. You know, when you do a shot, you always imagine, you always pay not only the attention who's photographed, but the background and the surprise of it. So I think it is the same theatrical effect. This last question, can you say your goodbyes? No, this is an instruction to me. Jerome asked, so I'm going to say goodbye after you answer this question. Jerome's asked, you talk about being able to start from scratch in America. How do you incorporate the history of a land into your work? And how does it differ to build in Italy versus America?
Well, maybe we touched upon that a little bit earlier in the session, but in Italy, you have to look everywhere around you, what you're competing with. And apart from that, the laws are so restrictive, so incredibly restrictive, and rightly so. So the move you can make are very relative. Here is much less restrictive. Maybe it should be more restrictive sometime, but it's much less restrictive in terms of aesthetics and move, so you feel much freer. So you really can express yourself more. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. If you make a big mistake, it's terrible. But it's wonderful to be able to have the freedom of, we basically have more land.
You talked about restrictions. When you talked about restrictions in Italy, it's not only bureaucratic restrictions, but I think maybe you can explain when you had your house in Rome and you wanted to redo the electric, and you had to ground the electric. Oh, yes. But as soon as you ground it, there is a Roman ruin.
The law required you to ground the electricity to have the third, and then we kept looking for ground, and there is no ground. There was no ground. The electrician said we cannot find the ground. It's under the pavement there was a Roman cistern. I mean, Rome was underneath, 20 feet below, and you had huge cisterns and water passing through. So it was a nightmare to be able to grind the electricity, which you're required to do by law.
Been built from old buildings.
That's right. Exactly. So that's the problem of building in Italy.
Well, Pietro and everybody who has attended this session, we'd like to thank you very, very much. And Pietro, I'll talk immediately after. I'll call you. Thank you so much, Paula and Jack, Evan, and I hope you enjoy the book.
Yes, lots more secrets in the book.
Thank you so much to both Isabella Rossellini and Pietro Cicognani for that wonderful event, for enlivening us with their friendship and with their shared art. I thought it was just wonderful. we have copies of the book here at the store. Pietro was so nice as to sign some for us. So if you'd like to reserve one of those copies, you can send us an email. You can also just stop by whatever day you can. We're open 7 days a week, 11 to 5 until 6 on Saturday and Sunday. We also have Isabella's wonderful book, My Chickens and I.
Oh, my chickens.
And many more books and these books as well on our bookshop.org page if you follow the link right below us on this page. Next week, we have events with Elias Corey and Robin Cresswell. That's Tuesday, October 13th. They're going to be talking about recent events in the Middle East and Elias Corey's latest fiction, Children of the Ghetto, My Name is Adam, that was recently translated. And then on the 16th, we're going to have Edmund White and Renato Morocco discussing Oscar Wilde's Italian Dream, and it's Oscar Wilde's birthday on Friday the 16th. So come back to the site next week. We hope to see you there, and thank you again to everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful night.